There you go.
All right. Welcome to a weekend edition of Let Freedom Ring. My guest today is Stephen Denis. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Yeah, happy to be here, Dan. Appreciate it. I think this is a great thing that you're doing, and I'm happy to get my shot.
Yeah. No. Good to see you. It's been a little while since the whole pandemic has broken out. So, but Stephen, let's get to know you just a little bit. First question: where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, I'm originally from Warwick, Rhode Island. So that's where I was born and raised, and attended college in New Hampshire. And then shortly after that, went back home to Rhode Island for a little while, and then back up here for work, back up to New Hampshire for work. So yeah, Rhode Island, it's a great spot, especially during the summertime. So hopefully this pandemic thing can speed itself up a little bit, so that way we can enjoy summertime in Rhode Island. So.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice. Now, what's one thing everybody should know about you?
That's a good question. I'm pretty open and transparent, so it's like that is a good question. I would say that I'm a very passionate person, and it's funny because like I'm watching the Last Dance Michael Jordan documentary, and you see like the fire and the passion that he had and the way that he exhibited it by just, berating his teammates and stuff like that. That was never, I've always been a leader, as a captain of baseball team in high school. And, I've always been more of the guy, despite being, a little bit more quiet and reserved. I'm definitely a very passionate person. And, when it comes to leadership things, I was more of the guy, if you messed up, I took, my arm around you and took you behind the dugout, rather than, sort of undress you on the field. So definitely a very passionate person. The things that I care about and feel invested in, I give 110%. So sometimes, when I'm a little bit more quiet and laid back, that doesn't come across.
All right. No, good answer. And that documentary has been wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Great, and I'm looking forward to watching the finale tonight.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's gonna be. I kind of just wish there was more, or there was more seasons to just or pick another team.
If it went without commercials, I think especially because we're so used to like Netflix. If it didn't have commercials, because it just seems like the 2 hours just fly by.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. Forget that they're two separate episodes. So yeah, and I also think that when this whole pandemic is over, that we need to allow swearing on TV again, because it's just it's cool seeing. I don't know which channel that you watch it on, but if you watch it on ESPN, it shows like the unedited, uncensored version. So I'm all for that. I just think it's just a cool thing to see. It's just different. So.
No, it's super cool. The first time the couple times I swore, I went, did that just happen?
Right. Well, because I saw when I first tuned in the first time, it said like mature audiences, and I was like, what could they be talking about that people haven't heard before? But I didn't know that they were actually letting F-bombs fly on ESPN. So.
Yeah, no, it's been fantastic. And final question, sticking to the theme of the show, Let Freedom Ring. What does it mean to you to be an American?
Yeah, this is always
an American mean to you, I should say.
Yeah, this is always a fun one. So what does being American mean to me? I think it means the ability to do more, the ability to ask why not, are certain things that, growing up in history class and just, developing myself as a person, when I sort of look at America and American history, I think of, our ability to persevere and ask why not when we, are faced with these monumental challenges. Similarly to what we're facing right now with, COVID-19, I think America is a land of big ideas, which is why, that's, and oftentimes, they may be the harder ideas to come to pass, but I do think that, the ability to ask why not and to think big picture is what's gotten us to where we are today.
No, good answer. I think that's I love asking that question because I'm getting so many different responses on it, and that's good. That's going to bring us into current events.
Okay.
Obviously, if anybody's been following the show, it has not been in the studio, which was initially the plan when I got this going.
Very bummed out. Thought I was going to get my public access debut.
Yeah, we'll make it work eventually.
Looking forward to it.
Once everything gets, I email them weekly to see what the restrictions are gonna be
Yeah.
lifted.
Is
But
that phase 3, phase 4 when they allow public access back in
yeah,
the
I don't know because you're only talking about 3 people in the studio at one time. So
Yeah.
I figured that'd be, but irregardless, um, how has your life changed during COVID-19?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. I mean, I was actually I was on a trip traveling. I was in Texas when the shutdown began. I remember being at a bar as they canceled the NCAA tournament and as they canceled the NBA season. I remember the report coming across the TV that all NBA games that night had been canceled because Rudy Gobert tested positive for coronavirus. Since then, it's been a whirlwind. It's been a complete 180. I would say personally, I'm pretty isolated. I'm away from my family. I have a roommate, but it's just been me and him in the past 2 months.
Yeah.
So I would say the biggest effect for me, I'm lucky. I still have work. I still, am healthy. Those are the two, main things. But it's still affected. I think the toll that this virus is going to have on people, even if they're best behaved and they're following all the guidelines, is the mental health effect that it's going to have on a lot of people when this is all over. They already say, loneliness, is really detrimental to your health, both physical and mental. So I think that, and I'm personally a person that, despite being more quiet and reserved, I get a lot of my energy through other people, through, whether it's just communicating with other people or, working with other people. So it's been tough. I feel like I've adjusted to the work from home aspect, but I've always been someone that, especially when it comes to work, has done that in person. When I did work in college, I did it in the library. When I did work at home in high school, I did it at the dinner table. So there's always sort of like this sense of accountability, where I can sort of show that I'm doing the work and there's just less distractions. But I would say the isolation has been the toughest part. So just trying to stay engaged through means like this and video chatting with different people, and it's actually made work something I look forward to more often than usual, just because there is that engagement.
Yeah, it's definitely the isolation is a big thing because you think about when we're at work, I could walk up to your desk and say, "Hey, what's going on?" We can
Yeah.
chat, and or I could walk up to Kara's desk or whoever, or
Yeah.
we could go into Cindy's and which is a cafe at our work, and just talk to people. Now we
Yeah.
don't have that option. You do have to make the effort to video chat people if
Mhm.
if you want to talk to your coworkers. So, no, it's definitely I'd say it's probably right. I think there's a lot of people there's a lot of people that I know that are immune system compromised that they're
Mhm.
literally staying in and having groceries even delivered, so they're
Yeah.
not even having that opportunity. So yeah, I think that's a good answer, and that's something that we do need to talk about is the mental health aspect of all this, and sometimes that gets overlooked.
Yeah, but it's been crazy, and I think too, the class I teach on campus is it centers around like business and millennials and Gen Z, and if you look at what millennials, especially Generation Z, who's sort of the generation that was they they know nothing but the internet from commercialized. Um, you know, Y2K, 9/11, the war in Iraq, the recession, and now coronavirus, right? I mean, it's been, big, undercutting, punch
Yeah,
or another. And I mean, it's certainly a tough situation to come up in.
yeah, no doubt about that. But we'll get through it. Um, there has been a credible threat to kill Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. I'm not even going to use the person's name that had the threat. I don't even want to dignify that person. However, what the heck is going on in Michigan? What's your take on what's happening there?
I mean, I think that there are protests that are, if you look at where these protests are being organized by, a lot of them are, right-wing organizing groups who, either try and churn out the vote around election time, or they just try and, they're trying to get a message across. I also find it interesting too that where a lot of these bigger protests are happening are going to be pretty important swing states in the upcoming election. So Michigan, Wisconsin, places like that. Who, I just think it's. I also think the governor of the governor of that state is on the rise politically in the Democratic Party. She's a woman, so there's just a. I feel like with this whole coronavirus protesting, there's a sense of machoism, masculinity, that it's just like, if you're weak, you're a beta if you're, inside wearing, or if you're going out and wearing a mask. So I think that's part of the problem, is that there's just not enough self-awareness or empathy to go around. But yeah, and I also think it highlights a very strong inequity in the country. You have these protesters who are predominantly Caucasian, protesting to open up salons and haircuts and, golf courses. Yeah. And that's deemed as acceptable. But then, an unarmed black man gets gunned down in the street, and that's, protesting that is deemed, vigilantism. So, I think that it's just a perfect, microcosm of the inequity in the country.
No, I agree. And I just think that I just don't understand the protests overall. If you're out of work, I get it. I totally get that you're upset and you want to get back to work, and looking at this, the coronavirus outbreak may look a little bit different to you. But if you're protesting because you want to get a haircut or whatever else, to the point where you want to threaten the life of the governor of your state, and you want to show up at the state house with, AR-15s or whatever the heck they use. It's just crazy to me. And you're right. It's like, well, you can't protest certain things, but we can show up with guns to the state house. So,
yeah. I mean, I also think it showcases, just further inequities. I can guarantee you that person that threatened to kill the governor is not going to face domestic terrorism charges. I don't know if they have, but if they're going to get charged with, something lower than that, but I personally think that's, they're unable to go into work and do their job, their, political public service, because of, threat for their safety. I think that's terrorism. And it just shows the two drastic different viewpoints of this virus, that I just think there are people that are taking it seriously because they believe in science. It doesn't mean we shouldn't look hard at the science that we're getting, but to just dispel it because it's coming from a scientist and not, your favorite right-wing podcaster is,
Yeah. No, that's very true. It's just crazy to think about how we can't get on the same page about this. Even, it is wild. That's going to bring us into pop culture. The director of Call Me by Your Name, I don't know if you're familiar with that movie.
I've heard it, but I haven't seen it.
Director Luca Nino, I'm not even sure I'm saying that name right. Okay. He's talking about remaking Scarface. Now, what do you think of that? Do you think Scarface needs a remake, or are we just kind of, is this just another movie that we're just remaking for the heck of it?
I think you're right. I think one thing I look at nowadays is that there's not a ton of original ideas or original content that comes out. A lot of it is, this was popular in the 80s or 90s. Those folks that, were, our age back then are a little bit older, but they're still, moviegoers. So I think they're just trying to take advantage of that. Okay, if you were my age back then, and you are 30 years older now, maybe you take your kid to go see it, or your grandkid. So I'm not a fan. I think a lot of these reboots can, be done without, but they're going to keep coming because people are going to keep seeing them, and they're probably not going to be great movies. So I hope you know that going in.
Yeah, yeah. I love Scarface. I wouldn't say it's in my top. It wouldn't even be in my top 10. But I do really love that movie.
Mhm.
I don't really know if it needs a reboot. Will I see it? Probably. Will I
Yeah.
enjoy it? Probably not really.
When's it set to
Maybe
come out, or has it even been like? Is it even like?
the decision was just made to
Oh,
do
okay,
it.
all right, all right.
Um,
Because I know
so
a lot of movies that are set to come out, spring, summer, fall, right, this in 2020. Some of them, they're starting to think about just coming direct to consumer. So,
yeah,
your Disney Plus or your Netflix, regardless, instead of having, waiting to open up a movie theater. You can
that's
only take
gonna
a car, so.
it's gonna change. Right, the pandemic's gonna change the landscape of how you get movies for
Mhm.
sure. You
Yeah,
know, I also heard a rumor that Amazon wants to buy out AMC, which just another thing for them to take over. You know,
yeah, yeah.
so
Jeff Bezos on his way to $1 trillion. So.
uh, that's just who needs that much money? It's crazy. Um, Jerry Stiller just passed away. It
Mm.
came out that a lot of the producers and directors on Seinfeld said they had never given him an extra note, and they never really adjusted his performance. They kind of just let Jerry go out there and be the character that he was, Frank
Mhm.
Costanza and Seinfeld, and then did the King and Queens. I mean, talk about. I don't know if there's comics like him anymore. Like that guy probably had improv down like that.
Mhm.
Do you have a favorite Jerry Stiller moment?
So I don't know him from Seinfeld. I've actually never seen Seinfeld really, but I do know him
Oh,
from
you would. That's right up your alley, Steven. That show's
right.
right up your
Yeah,
alley.
I've seen bits and pieces of it, just flipping TV, but just a generational thing. But I grew up watching. It's like every night, dinner we'd watch like Everybody Loves Raymond and King of Queens. So I know him as the kooky father, who he's it seems like he played a similar role on Seinfeld, but yeah, I mean he was just funny, and I thought it was even interesting seeing how when I was younger, you often think like these are playing like their real live selves, but then when you see him on like a late night talk show or an interview or something like that, you see how well versed and how different he is. So yeah, I mean he was a joy to watch on TV. So very funny.
Truly a brilliant man, and I have a bug flying around in my window right now. Um,
Murder
yeah,
Hornet.
truly brilliant. His son also awesome. Um, but yesterday, more sad news, as Fred Willard passed away. Another
Yeah,
pretty comedic genius. Fred Willard. I mean, I think. Have you ever seen Best in Show?
never seen
Um,
that. I know him from, I believe he was again a father in Everybody Loves Raymond, I
oh,
believe.
okay.
And then I know him from Modern Family because he was also played like a grandfather role in that.
Yeah, I mean, and he was also the boss and Anchorman. He was Ron Burgundy's boss.
Yes, that's true. Right.
It's funny. Yesterday I
He's from that
was,
age of like being able to improvise, and they are able to make things funny without having to put too much effort into it.
yeah, no, I agree with that. It's funny because yesterday I told my sister-in-law, I said Fred Willard died. She goes, "Who's that?" I go, "Google him. You're gonna be shocked." She goes, "Oh my
Yeah,
God, that guy died." I'm like,
yeah, yeah.
talk about a guy who probably was in so many things and people might not even known his name, and
Hmm.
they probably found him hilarious.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, personally, I probably, with your sister, like I'm bad with the names of actors, but you show me a picture of them, I can be like, oh, I know what that person was in.
Yeah, yeah. So R.I.P. Jerry Stiller and Fred Willard. There won't be
Or
any more, like you guys. What are your top 5 favorite movies?
yeah, that's tough. So the movies I go to see in theaters are always, I'm a big Marvel and Star Wars fan. So those are the movies that I'll go see in theaters. But other than that, I usually wait until it comes, direct to consumer on HBO or Netflix. But my top movies, one that I think of like if I'm flipping through, cable and I stop and see that the movie is on, I will I'm going to stop what I'm doing, cancel my plans, and finish this out. Those movies are The Day After Tomorrow.
Okay.
Love that movie. The Dark Knight.
Yes.
Classic Batman.
One of my favorite roles of anybody is Heath Ledger in that movie.
Yeah, I mean it's just fantastic, and it's hard to be topped. Other top 5 movies. I mean, I think the Avengers, the Infinity War and Endgame. I mean, they're sort of one movie split into 2. Those are fantastic pieces of story building and world building. Over 10 years, I was when the first Iron Man came out. So the fact that they were able to pull this all together was crazy. And I think another 5th movie. I have to still lean sort of Marvel. Captain America: Winter Soldier, political thriller. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but I think that you would like it because it's sort of it's a political thriller espionage type movie that has to deal with and it's funny too. It has to deal a lot with like government surveillance, and it came out. They made the movie before like the big NSA scandal.
Okay.
But they made the movie before that, but it came out around the time that scandal released, and it was just timed perfectly. So that's a good one that I'll always watch if I turn it on and it's on.
Yeah, I got behind on the Marvel movies, and then I never went. I didn't like. Before I started working at my current job, I used to work at this place called Strive, where these kids. It was kids that were transitioning back to the community. They had spent some time in I wouldn't call it prison, but like jail. And I used to take the kids every Friday to the movies, and I got to see a bunch of the Marvel movies then. And then once I left that job, I never saw another one. So I might have to,
you gotta get on that.
I do, and
they're all there now.
It's definitely something that I felt behind on that, because that had come out. And then everybody was also talking about Game of Thrones, and I was like, man, I'm missing out on everything. Everybody's enjoying this stuff right now.
Those are the pieces of content that I enjoy. So I like watching the world building shows where it pays off if you pay close attention to it. But yeah, Star Wars, Marvel. I was a Game of Thrones fan. I was not disappointed. I was disappointed in the ending. If I could honestly go back and watch it, I may not have spent the time going all the way through knowing how it would end. But I enjoy the world building. I enjoy the little subtle references to other movies. But yeah, when you decide to commit, I think it's like 24 movies now. When you decide to commit, hit me up so that way I can make sure that you're watching them in the right order.
All right, sounds good. And so I didn't see Game of Thrones, but I'm getting the vibe that ending was not something people liked.
Yeah, it was very divisive, and it was just it was like a controversial ending, just because, not in the sense that the show was controversial, but the writers had been offered to write an upcoming Star Wars trilogy. They got all this fame and notoriety from Game of Thrones, and Lucasfilm and Disney was like, we want to bring you on and make Star Wars movies. So they kind of rushed the final 2 seasons of the show, because Disney was like, well, these are when these movies are coming out, so you need to like decide, and you can't really do both, or they felt like they couldn't commit to both. So you went from 5 seasons of really strong character building and really strong storytelling to the final 2 seasons when it was just really crammed together. And they were great, visually, and fantastic sort of climaxes of events, but it just didn't tie together neatly. And for someone like myself, I didn't watch it from every Sunday. I started binging it and leading up to the final season. I can only imagine I'd be more pissed if I had been watching it for 10 years and then that was how they ended it. So I would say overall fans were not happy with the finale of that.
It's very interesting because and one point on that, I believe timelines kill creativity. Okay. But HBO seems to have a history of this, because as probably anybody knows, there's one show that I love more than any other show ever is Sopranos.
Yeah.
And people hated that ending more than anything ever, because they didn't give us an ending. They didn't.
Mhm.
They just cut to black.
Yeah,
And
I think that's more of like an artistic choice.
Yeah.
That those directors and creators. This seemed more of a we need to wrap this up. How do we do it as quickly as possible? And when you spend all this time world building, and then you have to funnel it through 6 final episodes. There's you spend a lot of time in the first 5 seasons building up stories and learning about characters that just get forgotten about. So to fans who take it, who commit a lot of time to these genres, they can often feel like it's they're being cheated or there's a waste of time. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's tough. I go back and forth because it's always it's the creators' art, right? Entertainment, movies, cinema, TV shows, they're all art. So same with music, like you don't always have to explain what you meant by it. I think in the case of Game of Thrones, it was pretty there has to be some organization involved, and it seemed like that was lacking.
Sorry, I have this giant bug that's in. I'm just gonna shut my window for now.
Right.
This thing is like, I don't know how it got in or whatnot. I'm gonna kill it after. No,
that would make for some great TV.
Just kill it right on screen. But yeah, no. Now the other thing I wanted to touch base with you, because we've talked a lot about this, you and I.
Yeah.
I'm drinking out of a mug with my favorite Star Wars character, which is Kylo Ren.
Right.
However, the new 3 movies.
Yeah.
We all have some issues with them.
Yeah.
I do too, but if anything came out of those 3, it's Kylo Ren for me. What's your take? Did they mess this up?
Yeah, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I'm more of a Star Wars fan than Marvel. I mean, I don't equate myself to dressing up and things like that. But I'm a sucker for the world building and the storytelling. I think those last 3 movies were awful. The more I figured maybe the more time that goes by, and maybe the more couple times you watch it, the better you'll feel about them. They have not aged well with me. In the year, if it's even been a year since the last one came out. Yeah, it was a lack of organization. It just seemed like they had no plan. Disney owns both Marvel and Star Wars. And, Marvel was able to pull off 23 films beautifully, and then Star Wars couldn't even put one foot in front of the other and make one movie connect to the next. So, I just thought it was poor. It was poor planning, poor storytelling. They tried to rely too much, on people's emotional attachment to the original trilogy characters, the Luke, the Leia, the Han. And then they had no plan. I mean, they had no plan. There was no plan to bring the Emperor back in Episode 9 until after Episode 8. Like, I mean, that's just, if you're going to do something like that, you got to have an idea that it's going to happen. So, yeah, I'm not a fan at all. I think the better Star Wars content out right now, it made me think better of the prequels, honestly. And it makes me cherish things like The Mandalorian. And if you're a Star Wars fan, I would definitely recommend Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which is on Disney Plus as well. So it's sort of a series that takes place in between episode 2 and episode 3 of the saga. So, but yeah, not a fan.
Yeah, I definitely, there was no roadmap, and yeah, I walked out of the 3rd one. Now I didn't hate it, but I also felt like, I don't even know how to explain it. I walked out of the theater like, I just feel wrong. Wrong about that. I didn't like the Emperor coming back. His story was over. So, yeah, I agree with you. It's a very interesting take. I think most people do agree. They messed those movies up.
And the reason you probably like Kylo Ren is honestly because of the characters that are in the trilogy. He's the one that has the most backstory and is the most fleshed out.
Yeah.
Didn't do with the other characters. I mean, for the 2nd film, they had all the main characters separated. So, like, how are you supposed to feel emotionally attached to them? So, and again, they admitted. I mean, it's documented that there was no plan. I mean, JJ came in to do the first one, and he was told you're only going to do the first one. So he left episode 7 on such a big cliffhanger because he was like, well, I don't know what the person after me is going to do with this, so I don't want to like, shoehorn it.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It was just bad storytelling. So I think, but again, it makes me appreciate things like if you're a Star Wars fan and you haven't watched The Mandalorian, I would definitely watch that because it's the best Star Wars that's probably come out since like the original trilogy.
All right. Well, we don't want to. I'll definitely check it out. We don't want to spend too much more time on this because they broke our hearts just a little bit.
Right.
But it's gonna bring us into sports. MLB owners are set to lose $4 billion if the season doesn't happen. I don't feel bad for them, but that's not good for baseball. How do you feel about that? Do you think we're going to see sports in 2020?
Yeah, I don't feel bad for them at all. I think they've said they're going to lose $4 billion, but they refuse to open their books and show how they're going to lose $4 billion. They want to.
You can't trust Manfred either. So
right. I mean, it's hard to trust any of these, billionaire owners that cry poverty when and want other people to pay for stadiums and things like that when they want it, but they have the money. I think I side with the players. I mean, you're in times like this too, when you make negotiating concessions, right? I mean, there's no salary cap in baseball, but they want to institute a 50-50 salary cap for this upcoming season. If you cede that, if you allow that to happen, it makes it pretty hard to get out of that moving forward. After that. So what is everybody just going to go to 1-year contracts? I don't see how that deal, that specific deal that was proposed, gets passed. And I don't see, it's sort of to your larger question about sports. I don't see a feasible way for it to get done, and for sports to come back. It sucks because I'm a huge sports fan. It feels weird. We should be watching the Eastern Conference and Western Conference finals right now in the NBA. So it does feel strange and it's disappointing, but I don't see I'm someone that is taking, coronavirus seriously, and I think it is a public health threat. I don't see how you do it safely. Will it come back? Because there's a lot of money on the line. That's a big motivating factor. But even the UFC the other night, I mean, they had their big pay-per-view last weekend, and even they couldn't even, get it right. I mean, they had a fighter test positive for coronavirus the night before the fight, and he was mingling with other fighters. So I think the only way you get it done is if you do, sort of what Dana White's idea was, like, he's called it like Fight Island. If Disney World is closed right now in Orlando. If you shut down Disney, they're saying it could be shut down through 2021, and played, the rest of the NBA season there, where anybody related to the NBA, you're there for the next 3 months, and you can't leave. You get eliminated, you go home, you quarantine for two weeks, but there's no interaction. You play your game, you're back in the hotel. That's it. That's the only way I can see it happening. I know Vegas has been touted as a possible destination for that as well. I know Arizona and Florida have been touted for areas of you'd be able to pull that off because they're opening up now. But yeah, I think that we're starting to open things up a little bit too soon. And I know you and I have talked about how we think that this COVID's going to have a strong rebound, or it's going to have a rebound. How strong of a rebound it is, in the fall when numbers start to peak again. It's what we do now. So yeah, I would love sports to be back. How they come back safely right now, I don't see it.
Now, how do you feel about South Korea pulling it off? The Korean Baseball League, or organization, I should say, so far so good, and they're going to other stadiums. Do you think it's because South Korea was more ahead of this? Do you think it's because they're a smaller country? Is it just easier to do it there? Because I mean, so far they're pulling it off.
Yeah, so I think timeline wise, like they're on like the front end of the coronavirus timeline because their proximity to China. But even if you see there, I mean, they just had to shut down, I believe it was all bars in South Korea because they had an uptick in coronavirus. So, again, I think as we start to open things up, you're going to see those waves come back, and, you might start sports up, but then you might have to cancel them again, postpone them again. So I'm of the belief that we take care of the issue now, use stitches instead of a Band-Aid to try and fix this situation, so that way we can get it resolved and then move forward at a safe, healthy pace. But I mean, you've been at the Garden. Can you imagine, cramming into those seats up in the upper deck?
No,
safe,
not happening.
Distant manner. I mean, they'll literally, they want to have you sitting on top of people's laps in those stadiums to squeeze out the money. So, I mean, I think the NBA said too, like, they'll lose half of their revenue if they come back and don't allow fans. So there's a motivation to have them to bring back fans. Will they do it safely is the big question.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. I don't know what's going to happen. And I just, play it by ear. But I have been enjoying KBO. Don't want to spend too much time on this. Real quick, Conor McGregor calls out Floyd Mayweather for another fight. Would you pay to see that?
I don't pay to watch any UFC or sort of. I'll tip in a couple bucks with my friends and get it, but yeah, I would pay for it just because I think Conor McGregor is one of the most electric figures in combat sports. So I definitely think he could pull it off and beat him. But I wish he would sort of pick one lane or the other. Is he gonna fight in UFC or is he gonna fight in boxing? Because I do feel like it's a detriment to him in either one. If he keeps going back and forth. It took him 3 years to come back and fight in the UFC. So I think he's more suited and better equipped in the UFC. So, but as he gets older, you want to go into boxing because it's less, physically grueling. Then that's what I would do. But yeah, I think those two will flirt that fight and that rematch for until we're dead and gone.
Yeah, they want, that payday. But I do feel that in the fight they had, if they went to the octagon, you may have my attention, though. Floyd would he wouldn't know what to do there. But I felt like in the actual fight, Floyd let him hang around, gave the people a show, and then said, all right, now I'm going to knock him out. Where when he fought Pacquiao and some of his, he couldn't let him hang around. He couldn't, allow the punches that he was allowing McGregor to land on him, knowing that he could knock him out at any time. At least that's how I saw the fight. Like, I don't know. You know what? I say I wouldn't, but if we're in a place where we can all hang out again, which I don't know if that's going to happen, anybody would want to get together.
You go to a bar. You go to a bar and watch it. But yeah, McGregor's a street fighter. He's not a boxer. So it's tough. I wish. I've actually been watching during this quarantine. I've been watching because UFC 249 came back last week. I didn't watch that, but I've just been. It was the only real, American sports on at the time. So I was getting into the backstories and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of things that McGregor can do in the UFC, and I hope that when this returns, he had a quick knockout in his last fight. So I think he's poised and ready to go, but he'll take whatever check gets handed to him. So
no, it's true, and with McGregor, it's more the entertainment aspect of who he is.
He's perfect. He's perfect, and I hope one day he goes to wrestling. So I know you're a big wrestling.
He'd fit in perfect.
Yeah.
Now we've been out of the office since this happened, so I haven't really got to hear your full take. Tom Brady has left the Patriots.
Yeah.
How have you been coping with that?
So me, I am very objective when it comes to things. So, I'm the first person to criticize the Patriots over something, and I'm more often to criticize them because I know them, much better. It didn't break me up as much as I thought it was going to, because I think I had come to the realization a while ago, actually, that like he was done. Just based off the things that he was saying about him, he's gonna play until he's not having fun. Until he's not having fun anymore. Well, it didn't look like he was having a ton of fun last year. So it sucks that he went to the Bucks. I think that's just like sort of like an embarrassment of like a franchise. But I wish him and Bill the best. I think I think for legacy wise, when people think of Brady, he's going to be a Patriot, and you want people to think of him in the strongest light. So I hope it's the Patriots and the Bucs in the Super Bowl this year, and I would be riding with the Patriots because I'm a team guy. So, but yeah, I mean, good for him. I think Gronkowski too going to Tampa. It just shows that they were sort of a little fed up with Belichick, and wanted a little bit more free reign, which that's not how Belichick does things. So, but now that puts the pressure on Belichick to try and win without Tom Brady.
I gotta say, this is it sucks with everything happening, because this is one of the most excited I've been for a football season in a long time, just for the sure fact that winning Patriots always winning is great, but this is the first time in a long time where it's like, well, I don't know how this team's going to be, or I want to see what can Tom Brady do with another team. So, as just a football fan, this is like a season to really look forward to.
Right? Similar to when Garoppolo took over for those 4 games, or 3, because of he got injured, and it was Jacoby Brissett. But there was a bit of excitement when Brady was suspended of, okay, what's the team look like without him? So I think the team's going to look drastically different. I think it's going to be sort of like a defensive-minded team to try and find success. But yeah, I mean, more power to Brady. I hope he puts up a season like Peyton did when he went to Denver. So.
Yeah, it should be interesting. What are some of your top sports moments?
I
know we have a lot in this area.
Yeah, I mean, Celtics winning the NBA championship, KG screaming, in tears, anything's possible. I mean, I still get chills to this day watching it. I remember early on the 2004 World Series. I was second grade, at the time. So, but I do remember that. I do remember, going outside and, my dad waking me up for the final batter, because I fall asleep. You can't make it up that late, but the Patriots, I still can't decide which game I think was better. The game against the Seahawks in the Super Bowl or the game against the Falcons. I think the Falcons game was more improbable, where the Seahawks game, I think, was honestly the best football game I've ever seen. On both sides, it was just back and forth. Two Titans really. So those are some of my top sport moments. I'm trying to think too. I mean, anything New England sports too. I mean, the comeback, the Bruins comeback against the Leafs when they were down was pretty big. But yeah, I lean. I'm not a huge hockey guy, but yeah, the NBA, those moments, the Celtics moments, even just little ones. Jason Tatum dunking over LeBron. That's always going to be something that I. You try and look at because it's easy to think of the big Super Bowl ones, but yeah, I those are my top moments.
Yeah, as New Englanders, we've really been blessed to live in this time period, because I remember growing up in the 90s. I just never thought any of those teams were going to. I mean, I thought maybe the Patriots, because they got there, they got to a Super Bowl. But I always remembered growing up being damn, the Celtics were so good right before I start, because when I started watching the NBA, it was the Bulls. They were the number 1 team.
Yeah.
And then when I hit high school, I was like, man, I really missed all the good things that have happened around here. And little did I know that I was about to see some of the crazy.
I can't relate because again, I think the first, I remember I was, I'm aware, of my family used to have every time the Patriots are in the Super Bowl, they'll always do a big party. So I remember those first 3 championships. I remember the 04 World Series. I remember, I think the first season I started paying attention to basketball was the year that the Celtics won. So I am that kid that, a lot of older hate, because, I've just grew up and known nothing but success and championships. So it sets the bar high. And I'm sure, when things come back to reality, I'm going to continue to hold, these teams and organizations to the same standards. So.
Yeah. Well, very lucky. Things have changed quite a bit. We'll see where the future goes. It's going to bring us into politics, and we do have some fan questions. But first, I know that you worked on the Bernie Sanders campaign. Was this your first time, or had you done that in 2016 as well?
No. So in 2016, I was just a supporter. I was just somebody. was looking for a candidate to support. I wasn't a fan of the two at the time that were being offered. I remember it was like 2014, and I remember seeing, because these political campaigns never end, it seems like. But I remember like CNN saying like it was the two top polling choices was like Hillary Clinton and Chris Christie, and like I was like, it's 2 years out from the election. Why are they already telling us like who our choices are? So I was just a strong supporter in 2016, and obviously didn't go as we had hoped, but it was definitely very inspiring. Definitely a very inspiring campaign, and I had said I hope that he runs again because I want to do more. I know a lot of folks are big into politics and they like ranting online on Facebook and things like that, but I think if you really want to get to know what is going on and really talk to people, volunteer for that candidate that you support, because you just see it in a whole new light. So yeah, this was my first time. I started in February of 2019.
Nice. Any specifics that they had you do, like when you work on a campaign? What exactly is what's a day to day on that?
Yeah. So I mean, again, I was a volunteer. It started at he announced he was running for president in January of 2019, and the first event that he had in New Hampshire was in February. It was in Concord at a hotel, and I showed up to the rally to volunteer, and that was sort of the first. I had signed up. I had originally registered for the event, had signed up to attend, and afterwards I was like, I want to do more. What can I do? So I just started at our local field office in Manchester, going out and knocking on doors, phone banking. I was doing it for free, giving up my weekends for a year, and sometimes a couple days after work on the week. And then as I was excelling at that, sort of moved me into what they call like a super volunteer role, where I started, doing a little bit more of niche outreach. So I ended up getting moved into like the college outreach because I was so, closely related to, the college days. So it was making sure that students were aware that in New Hampshire you can vote. You can vote if you are from out of state but are attending college in New Hampshire, making sure that you have trips to the polls, ride to the poll, making sure you know where your polling place is, and just, providing information about how to register.
Awesome. And you even didn't you give, was it a speech or an introduction to Bernie at SNHU?
Yeah, yep. So I met him a couple times, and he did speak at Southern New Hampshire University, where I did get invited to introduce him on stage. I got to chat with him very briefly afterwards. So, I mean, it was very surreal. He's a great down-to-earth person. He's not your traditional politician, but, he is as, he's funny, but he is just as, sort of grumpy and, with that curmudgeon face. Like he has that sort of vibe to him, because he's a man on a mission. So it was a great experience. It was definitely very rewarding. It was having him win New Hampshire, was awesome. That was a long day. It was a fun day, and seeing some of the margins and some of the areas that I had worked. It really comes down to where people devote their time and attention in certain areas. So especially in a place like New Hampshire, where people are very they hold their political vote. It's a very personal choice for them. So having them decide Bernie Sanders was their candidate was a very rewarding thing. So obviously it didn't end as we wanted it to, but I do think that he's inspired a new generation of people to get involved into politics, like myself. So the mission continues. So,
just a side question off that. Now, you spend time volunteering and putting in time to help this candidate. Yeah. Is it this? And now you've done everything you could, and he wins New Hampshire. Is it disheartening when really you have no control what happens in all the other states and how the rest of his campaign goes? Is that like, I don't know, because I just never worked on a campaign, but I could feel like you did your part. It's got to be frustrating for it not to go the way you want once it leaves the state.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating. it's disheartening. I wouldn't call it, it's disappointment, right? I mean, I wouldn't call it despair, but you lick your wounds, and there are certain things you can do. You can still phone bank. Some volunteers, will take a sabbatical from work and go travel to other states. But there's a lot, especially in this age of social media. There is still a lot you can do to try and get the senator's message out there. But I mean, it was tough, especially because I think this election is, they say it every time, but it's a very crucial election. And I also think, there are a lot of factors at play based on how the race started to narrow itself down as we move forward. So, it was a whirlwind. One thing I can say is that the people that I worked with never took anything for granted. So, the times that we were leading in the polls, it was as if those polls didn't exist, because we knew it was still such an uphill battle. And definitely proud of the people that I was able to work with. Made some great relationships that I still keep in contact with to this day. And it's great to see people so invested in bettering the country and the world.
All right, awesome. I was very curious because I've never worked on a campaign myself. My brother worked on the Obama campaign in 08.
Okay.
But no, that's interesting stuff. That's going to bring us to the Let Freedom Ring fan questions, and we have two. Yeah. Bernie related. I think a lot of people had some questions once they saw that that you worked on the campaign. First question's from Ben Grant. He has been on the show before, and has restarted his podcast, the Ad Hominem podcast, which I plan on going on soon. His question was, ask him what are the major differences between the policies Bernie would implement as opposed to the policy in a country like Venezuela.
Yeah, I mean, it's an unfortunate comparison that oftentimes the right and even some establishment Democrats like to compare policies. I think looking at Venezuela, I mean, I know that you were a history guy, Dan. They have decades of longstanding corruption involved in that country that you can't put makeup on a pig and say that it looks pretty. So there's long-standing decades of corruption. Also, if you look at U.S. history, the United States has a long-standing involvement in how that country operates. I believe
it's very true.
So I saw that a couple of United States missionaries were apprehended because they're essentially allegedly trying to stage a coup, on behalf of the United States government. So I don't think the policies stack up, in comparing them. People love to compare to Venezuela, but they hate to compare them to Denmark and the Netherlands, who have, I believe it's Denmark now that has the highest rated quality of life of any country in the world, who has, similar democratic socialist policies that the senator pushes. So, I wouldn't say that that's a fair comparison to make, but I know that people on the right like to make it. So,
yeah, I never really understood the argument. You know what I mean? I always thought Venezuela was a weird comparison as far as we would never be like that. And I don't really think that's where Bernie goes with it. I don't think he's looking for absolute socialism in the United States.
Right. And I mean, it's also he's not an authoritarian, right? I mean, that's those countries. That's who the United States likes to prop up. Because again, I mean, it's just we look down upon Latin America a lot of the time, and how those countries are run and how people will call them third world countries, but the United States has a lot to do with that because we have a lot to do with what goes on in the Western Hemisphere of the globe. So I think we have to look at U.S. history and look at the United States involvements and how those countries are being run today.
And I also believe that socialism is a buzzword. And if Bernie had never said he was a socialist or never used that word and just said how he believed things should be, things would be a little bit different, or how people perceive him.
Yeah, it's a buzzword. I mean, he's again said that he's a democratic socialist, and there is a difference, which I know a lot of people don't understand. He believes in socialism for the people and not socialism for the rich. There's already socialism in the United States. They're in various different avenues. And I know we have another question coming up about it. So I'll save some of those points for that. But yeah, it's not a fair comparison to make Bernie's policies and progressive policies to things in Venezuela. So
yeah, I agree. Ben's a good guy, though. He was good on the show. He has good perspectives on things, actually, from a conservative who doesn't support Trump.
Yeah, and it's a good question, because I think that's something that needs to be cleared up, right? I mean, because again, it's you see things on Facebook or memes online, and people just buy it and think that it's true, and that there is a connection. But yeah, so it's a good question, and it's a good conversation to have.
All right, awesome. And from my friend Chris Lind, he asked, why is Bernie's brand of socialism different from past versions?
Yeah, I think that goes again on the authoritarian approach. I mean, I think a lot of people too associate, they'll call him a communist, which again just couldn't be furthest from the truth. He wants to bail out the people, while we've spent decades bailing out corporations in the country. I think I saw the other day, I mean, you and I, you probably got your $1,200 stimulus check
Friday I got mine.
But it just got reported last week that as part of that stimulus bill, fossil fuel companies in the United States might not have to pay income taxes for the next several years because of the subsidies that they got in that bill. So again, you and I got $1,200, which is barely enough to pay rent, but these mega corporations won't have to pay taxes for the next several years. So, he believes in bailing out the people. He thinks that these corporations have been taking advantage too long of people, of these politicians. I kind of believe that we live in an oligarchy where, it's not really the people that have the most influence. It's the people with the money. And it's oftentimes the corporations. So, again, people like to compare it to the Soviet Union and things like that, forms of communism, but hate to compare it to Denmark, the Scandinavian countries who have the top quality of life in, the world today. So, I think that's what you see. And again, one thing that really drew me to Bernie's message was that he made it a lot less about left versus right, which I think is something that they loves to get spun up in this country, via the media. He's not someone that really talks left versus right. He talks bottom versus top. Yeah. The people at the top, they love seeing, you and your friends bicker about, politics, because at the end of the day, they're robbing you blind, whether you know it or not. So, there's already socialism in this country. And it's just unfortunate, people care more right now about the fact that someone who's unemployed and receiving unemployment is collecting an extra $600 than they normally would. Then again, these companies that are getting subsidized, that we're paying these companies to not move their jobs overseas, and we're paying these companies to not lay off their employees, when that should be, you're a billion, near $1 trillion company. You should be able to do that regardless, but instead you're threatening the United States to do certain things. So again, I think that if people looked at the bigger picture, it's easier to throw shade at the person experiencing homelessness on the side of the road than it is to look at corporate welfare. But I think people need to start having those conversations to better understand the problem.
No, I agree with that. Good answer. And I don't think it's as controversial as a topic as some people may think, but it is what it is on that. Let me see here. I've been asking every guest this question because as a country right now, I just find that leadership is just so important. So important. What's a good leader to you? What would be the qualities of that?
Yeah, I judge a leader not by I really don't believe the what have you done for me lately? I more so believe, what does your track record show? I want someone who is going to, and this is something that the president lacks. I don't need to be told, lies to my face saying, there's nothing to see here, there's no problem. But a dose of reality is good. I mean, and again, I'm not looking for him to say that the world is ending, but I think there's a balance to be struck between, optimism that America will persevere and letting people know how grave a situation that, we could be in. So I think trying to strike that balance and not being too much of, on one side of the pendulum. But yeah, I mean, I judge a person by their track record. Don't tell me that you're for something now. This is something that we see with politicians. Don't tell me that you're for something now when you opposed it back when it was 20 years ago when it wasn't as popular. That's one of the reasons why I like Senator Sanders so much, is the fact that he was a person who had a lonely voice for a long time, but has supported policies that were extremely unpopular. Supported gay marriage in the 60s, back when that was not even a thought on most liberal politicians. And the fact that you end up on the right side of history is something that I look for. So because looking at your decisions in the past project, in my opinion, how you're going to make decisions when faced with them in the future. So that's what I look for.
All right. Good answer. I mean, have you felt, this might be an easy question.
Yeah.
Have you felt that we've had leadership from the White House throughout this pandemic?
No, it's been vacant. Unfortunately, I think Dr. Fauci honestly was in the early days of the pandemic was really sort of that guiding light. I think when it comes of times of crisis in the country, and again, like I had mentioned before, as a Generation Z person that borders on millennial, I've experienced a lot of them, no shortage. You really, and even for someone like myself who's so involved in the political world, you really throw political party out of the window, and you're just looking for someone to lead.
Yes.
And that's what, again, I'm someone that, is not a fan of Trump at all, but was like, all right, like, here's your chance, here's your chance to lead the country in a way. I think he made some good decisions. I think he's overall taken this coronavirus not as seriously as he's needed to. But no, I do not think that there's leadership. I think that they're more concerned about re-election. I think they're more concerned about the effect that it has on the economy rather than the effect that it has on everyone's overall public health.
I said this on the show the other day. If he was focused on re-election, then he should he might still win. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But he should just focus on leading the country instead of
would have looked a lot better.
These games that he plays and arguing with the press every day. And, and he may win again. I don't know, but it's unfortunate we deserve better. We really do.
Yeah, I think, I just think, I feel like I specifically know people that work in the medical field or are first responders, really. And I just feel like they've been let out to dry. This may be a controversial opinion, but, I see these flyovers and things like that and these claps for these people to work. Like, that does nothing for these folks. They don't have the supplies that they need. They don't have the support that they need. That's what I'm looking for from leadership, both on the local level and, the federal level. And I don't feel like it's been there, but it has been encouraging to see a lot of the local governments step up more than they had to in the past if they had a competent president. So
why has Fauci become a political to people? Like a lot of people on the right have totally just turned on him. Now, Fauci has said, I get information and I say what I say based off of this. That's it. I know he's not been perfect, but why is this turned into I just don't get it, I guess. The attacks on him.
Yeah, I mean, if you look, a lot of people it's a general lack of belief in science, right? I mean, you see it in other areas of politics and policy as well, as people's lack of commitment to the idea that there are such things as scientific facts. And again, like I said before, I think, when someone like this, a top leading public health official, comes out and says something, you don't just accept it on face value. You do your research, but to make up smears, and I mean, again, he's been somebody who's served in multiple political, administrations, both on the left and the right. So to say that he's partisan or like that, kind of disservice to him by sort of excluding him from a lot of the narrative. And I think it honestly, from the president, comes from a petty point of view, because Fauci had a higher favorability rating than the president did. So, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that I do believe that everything is political, just because of it's either political or money sort of are the things that are driving a lot of basically everything in the country. But it's unfortunate that we have to do that during a global health crisis, that we have to disparage people. Again, I'm not against holding them to a high standard, and if they're wrong about something, you hold them accountable for it. But it seems like there was a lot of even the president himself has retweeted things that disparage Fauci. So I think a lot of people, I think the American people, take what he has to say to heart. You can see the effect that his testimony to Congress the other day had on the stock market, when he said about how long the effects of coronavirus could last and the impact. And he talked about how he thinks that the reopening of this country could have a serious negative effect on, the economy further, and people's, the death toll numbers, and the economy, and Wall Street did not like that. So I think that it shows there's a separation between Wall Street and Main Street and everyday Americans.
Yeah, and the thing is, they're like, well, he's flip-flopped on this and that. I go, it's a new virus. The more information he gets could change what his recommendation is from even a month ago.
Yeah.
It's making, honestly, like Dave Portnoy has become someone that I don't care to listen to anymore, because he's starting to sound like, I get you're frustrated, but like, I didn't hear anything that said that, one, we're not in a lockdown, we're in a stay-at-home order. Two, he's talking about having a cure, but that doesn't mean like you can. I don't know. I listened to him the other day and was like, what is he even talking about at this point?
He's talking about Portnoy?
Yeah. He went on a rant about it.
He's a little bit, that's a little bit of a shtick of his. Also, I don't know if you've been following, he's been spending the quarantine day trading. So when Fauci came out with his statements and it tanked the market, he was admittedly not in the greatest mood. But he's always been sort of a do whatever you want type of person, and I do think he feeds into the similar with like the Elon Musk and the Joe Rogan, where it's if you're falling in line with these things, you're a beta, you're not as much as these other people are. So I think that's unfortunate, but I also think it's a tough line to find, right, between government overreach and authoritarian sort of stepping into your lives versus looking out for the greater good. I think if the disease killed you and only you, and you couldn't give it to anybody else, then let these people have free reign and Darwin will do its thing. But I think the fact that I saw the other day, Providence College, again, like I had mentioned, I'm from Rhode Island. Yesterday, they had, to celebrate graduation, like the block around Providence College where the students, the upperclassmen live, they were having, darties all day, not practicing social distancing and things like that. So it's unfortunate to see, because I just think you're going to prolong the problem. I think, specifically in Rhode Island, people are going to be pissed when the beaches can't open this summer because of, too many people have the virus and too many people are at risk. So,
yeah. And the crazy thing is, when does this all end? That's one thing we had to think about too, because second wave is going to come. Then what we're not done with it. We're never going to really be done with it. Yeah. So,
just look at 9/11, right? Are we still done with 9/11? Really? The the effect that has had on our life today, 19 years later, it's going to change humanity. It's going to change our day-to-day life. And we live in such a all or nothing culture right now, where it's, this is acceptable or this is not, that it's going to put a real sort of shockwave to that and how it's going to affect our daily lives. So it's going to be interesting. But I think back to your question about leadership is it's going to take some real, strong leaders to help see us through.
No doubt about that. We're going a little bit long today, but that's okay. Last question in politics, because you're a good person to talk politics with. Yeah. Obamagate. Where the hell is Trump? Where is he pulling this out? He wouldn't even, I believe it has to do with Michael Flynn's investigation or something along those lines. He talks about this in this presser that I believe it's the same presser he walked off on. What the hell is the president talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it is, it's an interesting case to look into because it does involve the persecution of Mike Flynn, who, sort of spawned off this entire Russiagate scandal that, the media and, politicians were obsessed with for 3 years. I think it's something that, should be looked into. I don't think it can be discarded, right? And if you look at the way, the media hasn't really covered it. It's similar to how they've sort of avoided talking about Tara Reid and Joe Biden. And oftentimes when that happens, that means that there's, possibly something there. But I think if you do look at the trail of events that has happened, did Russiagate get much right? Was there much, Robert Mueller sort of dispelled a lot of the myths and things like that had been purported, that Russia had something over Trump and that there was a P-tape and all these things. All these things didn't exist, but we were told that they did. So I think that, I think it's going to be interesting too to see how it connects to Joe Biden, because Joe Biden was in the room when the decision was made to wiretap or surveil Mike Flynn. So, he says that he had no input into the decision, but he was in the room when the decision was made. So, I think it's going to be something that it's going to be similar to 2016, where we saw, sort of competing, this person should be investigated, this person should be investigated. If it wasn't for coronavirus, I would think it'd be a much bigger topic sort of heading into the election. It's crazy to think that, we're 6 months away from the election. So, I think there's a good, what I would recommend to you and what I would recommend to, I'm not sure if you're aware of Glenn Greenwald. He's done he's the journalist that broke the NSA story. He works for The Intercept and worked with Edward Snowden. He had a podcast sort of detailing the events from start to finish. And he's sort of a very objective person. He'll criticize both Democrats and Republicans. Sort of goes after the neoliberal establishment type. So I think there might be a little smoke to that fire, but I just think it's Trump trying to deflect right now. But I don't know.
When he said that the other day and wouldn't give any information, because I kind of looked it up and I was like, all right, it has to do with Michael Flynn. And but when Trump just says, well, you know exactly what it is. Well, we the people actually don't. So if you have a legitimate gripe, our politics are insane right now.
Yeah.
That's going to bring me to my favorite segment of the show, blank versus blank. I'm going to give you 2 words, 2 people. You got to pick one and say why. Steph Curry or Ray Allen?
Steph Curry. I just think he changed the game shooting-wise. I think he more dynamic on the ball as well, better handles. Who do I trust to knock down a shot? Final seconds of the game, I would say Steph Curry. So, but I do think Ray Allen. I think that there would be no Steph Curry if there wasn't a Ray Allen. So, but I would side with Steph Curry.
All right. 2013 Red Sox or 2018 Red Sox?
I think 2018 was the better team, but 2013 obviously meant more to the city following the Boston bombing. So yeah, 2013, just that story was incredible. They were the team that really wasn't supposed to win, and they ended up there. 2018, they dominated the entire way through. So 2013, I feel like 2004 and 2013 will always be more memorable. Definitely.
2013 was one of the funnest seasons ever. It was
just fun group of guys. I mean, they're all sort of like ragtag. It was a good group, so that's fun.
Barack Obama, Bernie Sanders.
I have to go with Bernie. I know you're a big Obama fan. I just think that, I miss Obama's class in the White House. I miss his, sense of comfort that I think he would, do a much better job leading us through this crisis right now. But I think when you look at the totality of his presidency, whether it's the NSA scandal, whether it's some of his foreign policy decisions, there's a lot bad there. Bernie's never been president, but I believe that he would not make some of those decisions. So yeah, I have to go with Bernie. I also think I also think Bernie, what he's doing more for the future of the party is going to be important, where Obama is still influencing things, but he's busy with Richard Branson, water skiing, private islands. So you see how the presidency changes you, and a lot of people like to profit off of their public office. So I don't, Bernie's been in politics for a long time, and besides writing a couple books, he hasn't really done that. So.
Actually, I think Obama's set to become a billionaire now. Actually, he's made a lot of money off of, and you know what? Whatever.
He's younger than most presidents, right? So he's got a longer runway to make that money, right?
Yeah.
So, I just think I liked Obama the candidate more than I liked Obama the president. So I'll put it that way.
I mean, the guy has so much charisma that honestly, he could do whatever he wanted. I will say why I pick him is because that was the first time in my life that I'd actually been passionate about a candidate, living through 8 years of George Bush.
Yeah.
First election I could vote in was for a presidency was Kerry versus Bush, and I liked Howard Dean, and then Howard Dean shot himself in the foot. But then when 2008 came, it was like, and it was tough because I'd always liked John McCain since I was, since he had ran in 2000. So I was all about Obama, but I also liked John McCain. So it was very but Bush was gone, so it didn't matter. It was either way,
But no, you're talking about the candidate right now, right? You're not talking about Obama as president. So I think he did a lot to inspire a lot of people coming out of a dark time during the Bush era. But I just think that, he made a lot of poor decisions as president. He made a lot of good ones as well. We made a lot of progress under Obama, but I just think that it could have been better. And that's my take on it.
Well, and as critical as I am of Trump supporters, just because I feel like he constantly is lying to our face, I know that feeling of wanting to double down on a candidate that you truly believed in. Because I'm sure in the past, I've doubled down on something Obama made a decision with that I probably thought was a bad idea, but felt I had to defend it because, that was my guy.
Yeah.
We do need to get away from that as people, because we put these officials there. They're not a freaking sports team. They're a president.
That was the same thing I was like.
So The Office or Community?
I've actually never seen Community, which is shocking because my guy Donald Glover is in there. But I have to go with The Office. I just think that they're, the cultural impact that it's had on generations of people is funny. I mean, I've watched it probably 5 or 6 times. I've never seen Community. I know it's on Netflix, and I need to get to that. But so by default, I have to go with The Office.
I've seen both, obviously, The Office, but Community is hilarious.
That's what I've heard. I've heard Community is up there with The Office, so that's why I got to get onto it. So
And they used to be on the same night, so it was they had a great lineup on Thursdays.
Was it
NBC,
NBC too? Were they both NBC
yeah,
shows? Oh wow,
NBC's had a
that's
history.
prime TV night, huh?
Yeah, they've had a history of having great Thursday night TV. Now, right now, I couldn't even tell you what their lineup
No,
is.
I feel like back then too. I maybe it's just because of the generation I grew up in with like Netflix, but The Office on like I think right now it's on like True TV. Like watching The Office with commercials is not the same as watching it without commercials. Like I don't think I could sit through 30 minutes and watch one episode of The Office when I could probably watch two, in a little bit longer of that span. So, but yeah, I'd have to go with The Office for that.
I mean, when I was in college, every Thursday it'd be an event in my apartment. Everybody would come over. At one point, when it get nice out, we would watch The Office outside. We'd set up the
Was it
TV.
that popular back then? I thought it didn't really like. I felt like it was
Big
popular.
time.
It didn't catch. Was it still like a cultural phenomenon back then, or was that after?
Was it cultural phenomenon? Oh, so season 2 was really popular.
Yeah.
Season 3, it started to really get popular. So that's like 2007.
That was with like Jim and Pam and stuff like that. So that was like
big
follow. Yeah.
So then it on college campuses it was very popular already.
Okay. Yeah.
And then 2008 it just continued to get even more popular. 2008 was probably my last year in college.
Yeah, and then I think Netflix opened it up to a brand new generation of people, right? I had never watched Thursday night.
Oh, really?
But,
every Thursday. That's I'll tell you, watching, like, I could remember exactly where I was on certain episodes, so it's just a good show. This is probably a slam dunk for you, but I figured I'd ask. Donald Glover or Will Smith?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Will Smith too, I don't know if you know, but he just featured on a song that is it's
with
pretty
Joyner Lucas.
Pretty good, yeah. It's pretty good. He's got some good flow, but yeah, I got to go with Donald Glover. I mean, Will Smith is a phenomenon, obviously, but yeah, I just got to go with my guy Donald Glover. I mean, I think he's right now the most talented man in Hollywood when it comes to. He's got an award-winning show in Atlanta. He's a great actor himself. He writes and directs, and his music is one thing I love about his music is that it's not so generational. Like a lot of music today, it's going to get dated really quickly. Where you can say like you listen to that and you're like, oh, that's probably not going to sound good in 10 years or 5 or 10 years. Where his music is really, you can listen to that for decades. So yeah, I got to go with my guy CG.
Another thing about Donald Glover in college was he was in Derek Comedy.
Yeah,
and they would have these.
Yeah,
they would have these YouTube videos that we would watch, and I was like, man, that guy's hilarious. I hope some of these guys make it. Years later, they all one of them.
Have you ever seen Mystery Team?
Did they made a movie, that group?
Oh, they made the Derek Comedy group made a.
I need to see that.
It's not like a great movie, but it's funny. Like the comedy is just it's similar to that sketch comedy that they had. But yeah, that's a start. I mean, he's got a great story where he just never stops. I mean, I love Will Smith, but again, Donald Glover, he just like never settles. He quit Community at its peak because he wanted to go pursue music. He quit writing for 30 Rock because he wanted to be on Community. So he does all these things and he never wants to be boxed into one thing. And I do think if there was no Will Smith, I think Will Smith paves a path for a lot of people like that to do multi faceted things.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I like them both, but I would have to take Will Smith just because I grew up with him.
Yeah. I grew up watching plenty of, I remember falling asleep or waking up to those reruns of Fresh Prince. So rest in peace, Uncle Phil.
Oh God, that was a tough one. Pro wrestling or NASCAR?
Wrestling. I mean, I don't really follow either.
NASCAR. I don't.
Or driving less. So, but yeah, wrestling. I watched more of that. I think every kid growing up, like every boy growing up, like wants to be a wrestler at some point. Whether it's just it's such in America, it's such a thing. Where you're just you're roughhousing in the room and you're doing all these things with your buddies. So yeah, I would say wrestling.
Pippen or Barkley?
That was a tough question. I mean, I mean, you grew up watching back then. I mean, I feel like people talk about Barkley more because he was like a standalone guy, right? You know, he didn't have a ton of extra help. Like how would Pippen have been as good as Barkley if, you know, there was, you know, if he was basically by himself, right? I don't think so. I think Barkley had the ability to score, and he sort of, you know, was that stretch four where he could play multiple positions. So I would have to go with Barkley. I also love the outspokenness of him. You know, whether I think he's right or wrong. I love when players are candid. You know, they showed a couple moments in that documentary where a lot of times players will bite their tongue. Barkley never does that. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like Barkley, the person. I'm never picking against Scottie Pippen, but it could be, you can be the number one on a team that doesn't win a championship, or you could be the number two on a dynasty. I guess is the way to look at that. Rhode Island or New Hampshire?
That's a tough one. That is tough. You know, I enjoy my time in Rhode Island. It's a very small state, beautiful in the spring and summer, but I do think that New Hampshire has more to offer, just of things to do. I mean, I would take Rhode Island beaches any day, but New Hampshire with the mountains, I haven't done the lake thing yet. I sort of defer to the beaches up near Portsmouth, but yeah, I got to go New Hampshire because I just think it has a little bit more to offer. You know, when it snows in Rhode Island, people come up to Massachusetts and New Hampshire to enjoy it. So yeah, I got to lean New Hampshire on that one.
All right, the toughest question of the day: me as a coworker or any other coworker you have?
And, I mean, no other coworkers invited me on their podcast, so I feel like.
All right. Well, Stephen, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. This has been a lot of fun. And what we'll do is, if you give me a link, we'll put, if you want to hear more from Stephen, he has a podcast too called Playoffs in Politics. Yeah. So we'll get a link in the description of the video. So if people want to check out your show, they can do that. But yeah, it was.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I took a little bit of a hiatus just because I was working on the campaign and I didn't really have much free time to devote to it. But yeah, I got some, you know, a rebirth in the works where, you know, I'm able to fine tune. I honestly hate editing. I know that these things, you don't really edit these. Creating the podcast, awesome, but having to edit it is brutal. So that's why a lot of people pay other people to do it. So yeah, you can follow me, Playoffs in Politics on Facebook, Instagram, and it's Playoff Politics on Twitter. And yeah, there'll be new episodes coming out hopefully in June.
All right. Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on, Stephen. And to everybody, as I've been saying, you know, we're in tough times, but you keep your head up. But until next time, continue to let freedom ring.
Thanks, Dan.